Hey everyone, this is Jared Samuels, and welcome to the 15th episode of What's Behind the Game. Today on the show, we're going to have a little first take style debate between one of my longtime friends, Irfan and Alam. Say what's up, Irf.
What's up, guys?
And one of his friends, Sam. So, hey Sam, how's it going?
Good. How are you, Jared?
These doing all right. So these two guys love the NBA, and they love to argue about the NBA. So let's get started. So my first question is, what are each of your predictions for the playoffs? Who's your favorite? Who's a sleeper team? So what do you guys think is going to happen here? Irfan, I'll let you go first.
Okay. Thanks, Jared. I think the most clear thing that we know about the playoffs is that the Boston Celtics are fundamentally going to lose at least by the second round, for sure. They may not even be able to get out of the Pacers without their best player. That's how poorly they've been playing. I think that the biggest theme that I'm seeing right now at the playoffs is that. So I think back to the Warriors when they went 16-1 in the playoffs. Okay, and when you think about that, you think that that's like kind of ridiculous, and I can't even imagine the Warriors with this team doing that today, right now. And so, like, I think the Warriors are even to some degree vulnerable. And if the Warriors, if the five-star, all-star lineup Warriors are vulnerable, I think the point is that we're going to see a lot of teams be evenly matched. Like, I don't think there are teams, like even the best teams in the NBA are going to struggle against the worst teams in the NBA. As we can see by the regular season, like the differences in seeding was very marginal, even by the end of the season. So that's why I think you're going to see teams like the Nets, the Magic, and the Spurs and OKC continue to do well, just like they did yesterday.
Sam?
I have no problem with that take, Irfan. Surprisingly enough, I would have bet on the Celtics making the Eastern Conference Finals just because of the way that the sort of bracket worked in their favor, but I don't see it. I mean, I think Giannis is really good. I think the Bucks are really good, and I think the Celtics have a tough time beating them, especially with that home court advantage. They're a pretty bad road team. I'm a Celtics fan, so disappointing.
But why? What do you think would happen?
We get into that later, or should I give my Celtics take now? But yeah, I think that there are some really interesting matchups. I think that the West and the matchups in the West might not necessarily shake up with the top seed winning. I think that the Spurs are actually. I think a lot of people are out on the Spurs. I think they have a very good chance of beating the Nuggets just because they have a very similar playing style, and Spurs have Greg Popovich. But I think the most interesting series, in my opinion, so far after day one, and I don't want to start freaking out just because it was day one, but I think Philly and the Nets could be a really interesting series, especially with the potential fallout of Philadelphia losing that series would be pretty fun to watch.
I completely agree, actually. I think, Jared, to your question, who's the biggest sleeper right now, NBA team-wise, I think 100% it's the Nets. I don't really think the Spurs are a sleeper team, nor OKC, because they have a lot of star power and history and playoff experience. But if you think about a team that's coming in with a chip on their shoulder and has a lot to prove against a big flashy team like Philly with a bunch of stars, a bunch of really popular stars, I think the Nets are the best sleeper story. And I think honestly, I am confident that they are going to beat the Sixers. I would have said that before game one. I think that like what's going to happen, and you already saw it happen, was that the Sixers are on thin ice. And the fans are going to quickly turn on them if the Nets can pick up speed. The Nets have momentum now that they've won game one. And I think the biggest difference is I think it's the player development. The Nets have phenomenal player development. They don't have stars. They're almost like the Warriors with less talent. No, think about it. Okay, think about it. You have someone like you have really like phenomenal players who play well. You have players who play well together, who understand their role, and who are well developed. Like Curry and Clay were well developed players. They weren't all stars, right? They weren't picked to be all-stars. Like Tobias Harris was brought on. Jimmy Butler was brought on, right? Like the Nets developed their players. They got D'Lo. D'Lo got better. He wasn't always this good. He's become an all-star. And I think that the Sixers are way overrated. Ben Simmons is one of the worst point guards in the league. If you create a spectrum, right? Like think about like how you compare players. Let's say Steph Curry is the best point guard in the league. Okay, which is like you can argue that, but let's just make the assumption, right? Ben Simmons is everything Steph Curry is not. So that means Ben Simmons is a very bad point guard, right? Ben Simmons was shooting bricks from 5 feet from the basket yesterday, and he got booed by his own fans. He is the definition. He is the next Carmelo Anthony. He will fail to evolve as a player, and it's going to show in the playoffs. When you have a player like D'Lo, who is a pure shooter with a pure form, who can dribble, drive, and shoot mid-range, he's far more versatile. And I think you're going to see that dynamic is going to be the reason why the Nets win the series, and why the fans are going to eat up the Sixers, why the media is going to eat up the Sixers, and you have a bunch of egos that are going to get chewed up and not know how to respond in a high-intensive playoff game.
Okay, first of all, I just think it would be really funny if the Celtics lost in the first round, the Nets made it to the second round of the playoffs just 4 years after that trade.
Yeah.
From just an NBA standpoint, not as someone who's from Boston standpoint, it would make me very sad, but it would be pretty ironic. But I don't think that Ben Simmons is the worst point guard in the NBA.
Yeah, sure. But
that was certainly a hot take. I do think that he's been overrated, and he's overrated. And I've been saying that since they got waxed by the Celtics in the second round last year. And I think that's a lot of the flaws in his game are exposed during the playoffs, especially when you have teams ratcheting it up on defense. And it becomes a really big problem that he can't shoot from farther than 15 feet from the basket.
Yeah.
And I mean, I have to say that I think one of the games that I watched in the regular season that was sort of a barometer of how the playoffs was going to go was that Sixers Bucks game from a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I think that game really exposed Ben Simmons also, and sort of a precursor to the playoffs. And you sort of have to wonder, just how will he get better? Or how will he be able to lead a Philadelphia team if he can't shoot, and if he's putting up like 8 or 9 points in a playoff game? It's not what you need from your point guard, and I think that's going to be a big problem.
Star point guard, not even your regular. I mean, this is your star. This is one of your best players on your team, right? Like, this is the problem: is that you have players that may have been good, 5, 10, even 5 years ago, but the NBA has radically changed because of Steph Curry, and he's outdating players and making them antiquated before they even turn 25. And it's the same thing that's going to happen to Ben Simmons, because Ben Simmons is not like Giannis. He's not dominant in any way. He can pass, but good for you. You can pass, but the point is to get the ball in the rim, not into somebody else's hands. And as a point guard, like, you need to be able to shoot now. Like, that's the new, like, Magic Johnson was a legendary point guard. He could not shoot. Have you tried playing with him in 2K? He cannot shoot. He cannot shoot. But that's okay, because at that time, that was fine. That was fine. But with the volume of three-pointers, the volume and accuracy three-pointers are being made now, that level of playing style would not work today. It just wouldn't. And so Ben Simmons needs to figure that out. And unfortunately, he's not going to do that in this playoff series. He's going to have to do that in the offseason. He didn't do it last offseason, so I don't believe he will. But I think that's why the Nets are going to win. And I think the Nets are going to win. I agree. I think the Spurs are going to win. I saw Denver live this year. I think they're a very, like you said, very good, consistent team. They play very similar style to the Spurs, but the Spurs have just better playoff experience. The staff has better experience. You have Greg Popovich, who is now the winningest coach in NBA history, the literal GOAT, the GOAT of GOATs. Go. Greg Popovich is on the Spurs, and you have Jokic, who's never played in a playoff game before, who's a phenomenal player, but that's a very big dichotomy. Winningest coach of all time. Jokic is a good player, but never played in a playoff game before. I think the Spurs take it. I think OKC wins as well. Russ is really is well playoff experience. I think Paul George plays well. His style plays well in the playoffs. He's clutch. That's important in the playoffs. I think they'll come out of. I mean, Dame is clutch too, but I think OKC, Spurs, Nets, biggest upsets in the playoffs.
All right. That's good. All right, let's move on to the next question, which is, who is your MVP this year?
Irfan, you want to start?
You want to take this one?
I mean, like, obviously there's I haven't settled on someone yet, and obviously we all know who the top two are.
Curry and Curry.
Yeah, Curry and Curry. Curry and Paul Pierce.
No.
I mean, I have to think that Giannis is the MVP this year. Mostly just because I have a vendetta against Harden. I mean, I look at his crazy stat lines, that whenever he comes and plays the Celtics 2 times a year, I just get absolutely infuriated watching him play. But I mean, it's basically the same team that was there last year, plus a new coach, plus a new center in Brook Lopez, that lost in the first round and was the 7th seed in the East, and he elevated them to a 60-win team, has been putting up ridiculous stat lines and fewer minutes than anyone else has been playing. I think that he's really been carrying that team, although I think that the 1-2 this year are just miles above everybody else. What Harden's done in Houston has been incredible. But I think that just sort of elevating a 7th seed to a 60-win juggernaut is a really big accomplishment, and I think that warrants considering Giannis the number 1 for MVP.
Yeah. I actually I would have to agree. I'm in a similar boat. Okay, but here's the thing. I think we're gonna get into this later. I think that who's the best player like this season, right? Like that's what the award is for. So like Giannis and Harden, that makes sense. But I still think the best player in the league is Steph Curry. So if I had to pick a player to put on my team for a season and a playoffs and a final series, it would be Steph Curry. It would be Steph Curry. but the real debate is between who's if it was between Giannis and Harden, who would it be, right? And I can get into my Curry argument later. I have no problem with that. But just to start, let's assume, right, that the NBA has evolved, right, like we just talked about, and Curry was the driving force of that. So now you have this 3-point NBA. You have more 3-pointers ever taken by players. The seed, everything has changed, right? And then you insert Giannis. So we just went on talking bad about Ben Simmons, right? And why he can't shoot, and why the NBA has evolved underneath him. Similarly to Giannis, right? KD and Dirk, etc., have evolved the NBA underneath him. Giannis can't shoot. He's getting better, but he can't right now, right? But you have a player who can't shoot in today's shooting-only NBA and is
still averaging 28 points a game.
Still averaging 28 points a game and is dominant. He somehow has made the Shaq style of basketball dominant, if not the most dominant, in today's 3-point shooting era of basketball. That is why, right? Like if I had to pick a player between Harden and Giannis to be on my team today, I would pick Giannis. That's how I think about it, right? And let me explain why, okay? You could put Giannis on any team, and he would make them a 60-win team.
Do you really think that? Because that's what everyone said about LeBron, and you put LeBron on any team, and he just missed the playoffs.
No. But that's the thing is that with his style of basketball, it's so consistent. Is the thing is that LeBron is not as physically dominant as Giannis. I mean, LeBron at one time, I think LeBron right now, no, but Giannis right now, right? Like if you think about Harden, you have to have an extremely particular style of play with that team for Harden's style of basketball to be good. It failed the first half of the season. It failed playoffs and playoff series before. It didn't work last year, right? Like his style of basketball is extremely dependent on the moving pieces around him, right? You need the Mike D'Antoni level of green lights for Harden to go off like he does, right? You need players who are okay not touching the ball. James Harden has his legacy this year, but let's remember 2 important points. He makes all of his points unassisted. He has 60-point games with no assists. No assisted points. Sir, it's not that he doesn't assist the basketball. It's that his buckets are of the product of no assists, right? Point 1. And point 2 is, for the past 5 seasons, he has the most turnovers of any player in the NBA, right? Because his usage of the ball is so high. If you put James Harden on the Spurs, would it work? Why? Coaching style, inexistent. If you put James Harden on the Bucks, would it work? Because they have role players who have their defined roles, who can handle the ball, who can also shoot, who can drive, who can pass, etc. Right? But if you put Giannis on the Spurs, that fits into Popovich's style, right? You have a 7-foot guy who can be a point guard. That's what's incredible. Who doesn't need to shoot, but still is efficient, right? You have Ben Simmons, taller, more physically successful, and can't shoot, but still put up the points he does, right? Like that's why I think Giannis is superior to James Harden. I would pick Giannis over James Harden. I think that it's a fair conversation. I think it's a fair argument. James Harden is obviously putting phenomenal numbers, but I think that when you think about who would you rather have on your team, ain't nobody picking James Harden. Nobody wants to play with the guy unless you're on the Rockets and you're forced to because Mike D'Antoni is like, great, you're the best thing that we have.
Where was your Steph Curry take and all that? I thought you were going to put him at number 2 for a second.
Okay, I'll give my Steph Curry take, okay? If I had to pick any player, right, to have on my team, Giannis would definitely be up there, obviously. My first pick would be Steph Curry.
What about Paul Pierce? Where does he fall?
Paul Pierce is definitely a top 3 candidate. No, but in all seriousness, Paul Pierce is garbage. He had a terrible career, and I wouldn't pick him. Gun to my head. But Steph Curry on the other hand, I'll give a brief Steph Curry take because I know it's coming later. I think Steph Curry, okay, like this is the most important point. Doc Rivers, Sam Walks's 2008 champion, Doc Rivers, went on air yesterday and said Steph Curry is underrated. Steph Curry, 2-time MVP, 3-time NBA champion, 1-time unanimous MVP, underrated. One of the highest paid NBA players, number 1 selling jersey, 6 different shoe lines, blah, 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 underrated. And he's right. Because you know who else was extremely underrated?
Paul Pierce.
Tim Duncan. Tim Duncan. Okay? Tim Duncan was extremely underrated his entire career, and I'll tell you the reason why. Okay, I'll tell you the reason why. And I'll pull up a quote. This is an important quote, okay? Chris Broussard once said, Steph is like their Tim Duncan. Duncan sets the tone. Duncan set the tone of the whole organization. It's the same with Steph. He brings the joy, okay? This is the problem. You have great basketball players, and then you have great leaders. And then you have players who are both. Okay? Steph Curry and Tim Duncan are players who are both. Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant are only one. And that's why Steph Curry was a 73-win team without Kevin Durant. That's why Steph Curry actually has a better record still without Kevin Durant. Not that Kevin Durant isn't phenomenal. Not that Kyrie Irving isn't a phenomenal player, a phenomenal ball handler. But he's not a leader. If you want a team that can sustain success over years, championship level success over years, who else has done that? Tim Duncan. Who else is going to do that? Continue to do that? Steph Curry. Kevin Durant leaves to New York. Love you. Thank you. Next. Steph Curry is the leader. He is the core of that team. They will still be phenomenal. He could put up Harden numbers even in his sleep, especially now that he has contacts. Okay? There's no reason why Steph Curry is the best player. And it's the same thing. Like LeBron leaves teams don't like have that. Like, Kyrie doesn't. Kyrie called LeBron to apologize because he said, "Holy crap! I didn't realize there was a whole other part of being a basketball player, being an elite basketball player. That's called being a leader, setting the tone." When the Warriors were experiencing drama this season, the worst drama of the entire organization's history in the past 6-7 years, what happened? Steve Kerr told Steph Curry, "I need you on the bus. You're not playing. We don't need your ball handling skills. We don't need your three-point shooting skills. We don't need your free throw percentage, your end game, whatever, period. We need you on the bus." And by just being on the bus, they became a better team. If I had to pick a player to be on my team, it's the player that I can pick who will literally sit on the bus and make my team better. That's why Steph Curry is the best player in the NBA right now.
Well, thanks. All right.
No complaints there.
Sam, you mentioned a few times you're a big Celtics fan. What do you think happened this year, and what are your take on like how Kyrie specifically has handled himself this year?
Oh God.
Your best world is flat theory, Sam.
Well, I've gone in and out on this team like 9 times this year. There have been so many times where I've been like, all right, this team's turning a corner. I'm feeling good,
When
finally gonna start playing the way that everyone hyped this up to be, and then they'll come out and they'll get blown out by 20 on the road to like the Bulls or something, and I'll just be like, yeah, this team sucks. Like, moving to California, I'm gonna be a Kings fan now. Like they're on the rise. But I think a lot went wrong. I think that primarily too many guys, and I thought that theory was ridiculous for a while. And then
the theory that Kyrie Irving,
they just have too many guys. I think that watching that is really clear because you have a lot of players who are in there, especially guys like Marcus Morris and Terry Rozier who are in contract years. They come in the game and they try to get theirs, and they feel like they need to get theirs. And if you watch the Celtics play, there's a lot of times when they'll be moving the ball around, and then it'll go into Marcus Morris's hands, and he'll just back down some guy, take like a ridiculous fall away, and he'll just clank off the back of the rim. And I think that it's really hard to establish chemistry. You need a couple guys in there who feel like they're being undervalued, which is I mean, after last year's playoff, it's a fair opinion to have, and it's fair to feel that you're undervalued. But I think that hasn't helped them, and certainly the way that Kyrie has conducted himself has also not helped them. And I feel like he's been really in and out and really moody on the season. There are some times he'll sit there and he'll take responsibility, like, I have to be a better leader. I'm the guy who's been there before. And then 2 weeks later, he'll be out there like ripping Jason Tatum for missing a late shot. And there's a lot going on. I really wish that during the trade deadline they had actually traded a few guys away, so that way there would be sort of more defined roles on the team. And they didn't do that. But which makes going in the playoffs interesting because obviously, Marcus Smart is out for probably a month or a month and a half.
Yeah.
And then might be out for the playoff depending on how far they get. But I'm starting to wonder just having fewer guys. I mean, I love Marcus Smart, and there's always those 1 or 2 playoff games that he just wins by pure effort for the Celtics. But I wonder if that maybe having fewer guys, you can get maybe Gordon Hayward or Jaylen Brown in the starting lineup, who have both been starting to play a lot better towards the end of the season, and sort of get those guys integrated into the offense more. And I wonder that'll actually help them and sort of allow Brad Stevens to define roles in the playoffs, which is, obviously a really late time to do that, but there's a chance that it could all come together. But
how much do you think is Brad Stevens' fault in this? I'm curious. Because people are like, "Oh, he's the next GOAT coach, right? He's the Butler mastermind. He led the Celtics team that ended up." How much of this is Brad Stevens? Because it's another piece, right? Like, you have your best player who's a poor leader, Kyrie Irving. He was moody. He didn't try to bring the team together. He didn't try to fix the chemistry. He went to the media. He made it worse. But then Brad Stevens has been quiet this whole season. I mean, how much is the coach responsibility to try and make the chemistry work on this kind of team?
I think that we went into the season not really thinking about how hard his job was going to be, and that he had a roster where There are 9 or 10 guys who should be playing like 30 minutes a game, and there aren't enough minutes for those 9 or 10 guys to play 30 minutes a game every night and get the touches that they want. And so I think that there was a little bit of chatter about how difficult his job was going to be and how he had to allocate minutes and roles. I'm not sure how well that went. But I think that from the sort of the media pieces that I've read, that I feel there's a lot of people in the NBA who think that Brad Stevens is overrated and kind of resentful of this like wonder dude status that he gets. And I think it's really interesting to see the evolution of how the Celtics went from this really overachieving team of, misfit dudes,
underachieving,
to the star-studded roster that's really underachieving. And it's really funny because if you look at the Celtics versus the Clippers, you had Doc Rivers, who had just left the Celtics, who had this really star-studded roster that kept underachieving and blowing playoff series in the second round of the playoffs every year. And you had the Celtics, who made it to the conference finals before Doc Rivers, who left to avoid a rebuilding era, did. And now they're sort of in this opposite situation where you have this really overachieving team of misfits in Los Angeles, and you have this like roster of clashing veterans and young dudes on the Celtics with Brad Stevens, who is supposed to be this like god of creating something out of nothing. But I think just watching the games has been a little bit frustrating also, because you see, well, I think, for example, the game we went to against Denver, the Celtics, were missing rotations in the first half, and they're leaving these guys wide open from three, and they were hitting them, and they're just missing these rotations, not closing out. And then we go into halftime, and that's when you're supposed to deliver your butt kicking your players and say, hey, we're missing these rotations and stuff. And they come right out of halftime, and then the Nuggets hit like 3 straight threes or something. Maybe it's only 2, but they had a couple of really wide open looks, and it's just like, how, like, I noticed this, and why wasn't this message delivered? So I think he's certainly not blameless.
You bring up a really good point. I think this is a very interesting point that doesn't get talked about enough in the NBA. Okay. Right now, there is an obsession with stars. Okay? And this is why the Nets piece is such a fascinating piece. This is why the Clippers pre-Tobias Harris trade was such an interesting story in the NBA. Okay. And this is why you have teams like the Lakers and the Celtics, storied franchises, underachieving this year. Okay. Is because of what the Warriors have done, there's an obsession with star power. But here's the important piece. Okay. People are trying to fight fire with fire. They think they're trying to fight fire with fire against the Warriors, right? You have people like LeBron who are risking team chemistry, who are shooting his team in the foot to get stars, to get Anthony Davis. I will put you out on the streets for Anthony Davis, right? And then you have teams that are overachieving. Who are the teams that are overachieving? You have teams like the Nets, the Spurs, right? Because what do those two teams do really well? They have really phenomenal player development. What did Luke Walton do very poorly this year? He failed to develop young and up-and-coming stars.
Did they have any young and up-and-coming stars?
You could make a good argument. You could make a good argument that those players are worth enough. Like, you put those players in other teams. Like, here's the problem. You are fundamentally not understanding the prowess of the Warriors. That is what the NBA is getting wrong. They think that the solution is star power. That is not the solution. The Warriors did not get good through star power. They got good through player development. Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green were all underrated players. They were all losers. Do you know? He played well at Davidson. Fine. Everybody counted him out. Look at his scouting reports when he was in middle school, when he was in high school, when he was recruited in college. He was not going to be as great as he was. But guess what? They developed him. This is why the Warriors have sustained greatness. It's because they have created player development, which is attractive star power. Okay? This is important. People don't understand that they are skipping steps here, right? The Lakers are trying to skip steps. They're on an accelerated timeline with LeBron. Fair. But they are trying to skip steps. The steps that they're skipping are the player development pieces, right? The Warriors are the most phenomenal team in NBA history because they combine player development with star power. Right? It's the Spurs. It's the 2014 Spurs plus better talent.
Man, you keep saying all these ridiculous things in the middle of your monologues, and then you say something at the end, and you like conclude with something that's completely reasonable, and I keep wanting to like blast you for saying these things.
This is important. You understand my point? You understand my point? This is important. Right? Like, you have teams that are vying. Like, the Rockets are like, oh, I'll just bring Melo on, and the team will be better. I'll just bring a star on, and the team will be better. The Celtics, I'll just bring right. The Celtics are a perfect example of this. Okay,
but didn't the Celtics do everything right according to your right? They developed their players and they had their stars. Shouldn't that have worked according to your model?
They're obsessed with star power. That's why they're obsessed with keeping Kyrie Irving on. The solution is not to keep Kyrie Irving on, right? The solution is not star power. The solution is like your team did better without Kyrie Irving. Why? Because your team was more focused on player development. You had role players who understood their role, who were confident in their abilities. That's better than pure star power, right? Players who understand their roles, who are satisfied in their roles, who do well in their roles, and combine those roles to play team basketball. That is the Spurs. That is the 14 Spurs. You do that. It wasn't good enough to win a championship. Fine. But it was better than star Celtics, when you had players who didn't understand their roles, who were either stars or trying to be stars, but weren't being properly developed. That's where I think Brad Stevens failed. That's where I think Luke Walton failed, is that they were obsessed. Like, the Lakers and the Celtics are star power, trying to bring Anthony Davis, trying to keep Kyrie Irving. That's not the solution. Take a book from the Nets and the Warriors. Develop your players to become stars.
I agree with parts of that. I think that, I don't think it's
my last point of evidence. And I'll let you know. Last point of evidence, okay? You take players like Swaggy P. You put them on the Warriors. They become better because they have incredible players. Let me give you an amazing example. Yesterday or the day before yesterday, or before the playoffs started, Boogie Cousins, DeMarcus Cousins, gives this quote. He says, I don't want to be, this is paraphrasing, but I don't want to be called Boogie anymore. I am DeMarcus. That is the Warriors' effect. That is the power of the Warriors, right? You bring big ego players, big personalities. You bring them to the Warriors, and Steph Curry sits down and is like, yo, you are part of a system now. This is a system that we play in, and you are an important piece of that system, and here's why. Swaggy P, three-point shooting. He went from Lakers joke to being an important three-point shooter in the playoffs. You brought Boogie and you made him DeMarcus. That is the power of the word. That is the player development. And that's the piece that other teams need to learn from, not the, oh, I have good stars. All these stars, like Warriors have all these stars. No, they had well-developed players who became stars. You need to develop your players to become stars. The key is to not just pick up stars. Because if you pick up Kyrie Irving, it doesn't just mean you're going to magically work.
Worked last year.
No, it didn't. It worked without him.
See, I think you're in a pattern of very binary thinking here, Irfan A. Smith.
Please allow me.
Because I mean, if you look at that Celtics Cavs series, for example, the Cavs team was not good.
Cavs. When was this?
Last Eastern Conference Final.
Yeah.
You don't think that having Kyrie Irving, when the Celtics forgot how to score in like the third quarter, you don't think that having him just get a couple buckets and calm them down would have helped them? You don't think they would have won that game? You don't think they would have won a couple of those games on the road if they had someone to calm them down when they came out?
No. Here's important. Ready? Kyrie Irving is net negative. That's the problem. He's gross positive in some ways, but he's net negative. If you add him, he gets a couple buckets, gross positive. The negative impact on the rest of the team is so much more that they would still have lost.
That team would have made the finals if he hadn't had that knee injury.
Why aren't they making the finals this year? Because he's net negative. He's net negative. And that's not necessarily him on any team is net negative. Him on this specific team where you have other players who think they're stars, who are actually pretty good, who don't need a heavy ball handle like Kyrie Irving, it becomes net negative.
I don't think him on the basketball court is the problem with this team. I don't think
that's true. There are other
on the basketball court is a problem with the team. I think that it's problematic. I think that it's problematic for teams. I'm not saying it's. Well, I think it's problematic that you have players that the league is so star centric now for team building. I think it's a really bad thing for team building because you have Kyrie Irving doing things where he injures his knee and then decides he wants to go to the All-Star game so he can kiss Kevin Durant's butt and so they can joke about how they DM each other on Instagram and all that garbage. And they let him play in the All-Star game despite the fact he just missed a couple games with a knee injury. And the reason they let him do that is because it's like, oh, well, we have to re-sign Kyrie so we can't upset him. And that is garbage.
Yeah, that's the problem. They're so obsessed with keeping him. Like, this is what exactly your point, Sam. This is important, right? People are going crazy right now about Kyrie and KD teaming up. Kyrie and KD. You think Kyrie and KD are going to fix the Knicks? You have a guy with 6 burner accounts and another guy who thinks the world is flat. Right? There's no leadership in either of them. That's why KD to the Warriors was phenomenal. Because KD is a beautiful player who's a phenomenal basketball player. And you put him in a system with a phenomenal leader, you get bucket championships. Kyrie and KD together with poor ownership management, that's a disaster. That's good for the NBA. And I definitely don't understand. KD, if you're listening to this, please don't go team up with Kyrie, because you know what's going to happen? You know what actually the most interesting thing that would happen is if Zion went to the Knicks, he would be the reason that they become good, because he is the next future leader of the NBA. Guarantee you. He has those qualities. That's what people don't – he's very inflated as a player. I love Zion. I'm a huge Zion supporter, but people actually miss the thing that's best about him. And you find it in his interaction between RJ Barrett and Zion Williamson. He is going to be a future leader. And if he goes to the Knicks, maybe. But just Kyrie and KD, think about that. Kyrie, KD? What? Who? Like, it's like people are forgetting about what basketball, what makes a team a team. Star-powered basketball does not just mean, like, this is why the Sixers suck. They're just trying to pull in talent. People are forgetting about the power of homegrown talent. Like, all these NBA players are phenomenal. People forget that they are all good. You know how good you have to be to get to the NBA?
Yeah, I've always said that Brian Scalabrine could have averaged 20 points a game on more minutes.
No, but think about it. There are so many players in the NBA with the right player development could be really good. I guarantee you, Lonzo Ball was on the Warriors and LeVar Ball was not his dad. He would be a phenomenal player. Or if he was on the Spurs. If Greg Popovich, if he was on the Spurs, he would fit in great. Other than LeVar Ball being his dad, and Greg Popovich would want that on his worst enemy. Like, that's the point, right? It's like the Lakers were bad because they didn't develop their young stars. And LeBron is selling them out for star-powered basketball because guess what? He has lost to the Warriors too many times. And he thinks the answer is star power. But the Warriors are not good because of star power. They're good because of player development.
Irfan, what was the last team that won the finals without star power?
Spurs.
And Tim Duncan and Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah, Kawhi Leonard was, I think, their only player who was a star, who was like star level. Tim Duncan was great. But no. I mean, Tim Duncan was great, but I mean, he was at the tail end of his career when Kawhi Leonard was there and they won that championship, right? Like, same with TP and Ginobili. They weren't playing prime basketball, right? Like, none of them were ever considered.
Tony Parker was the best player in the series, the series with Miami the year before, right? But year right before that.
But he wasn't the best point guard in the league.
He's the best player on the Spurs, and I think he was an all-star that year.
He wasn't the best point guard in the league.
I think he was an all-star that year. You should look it up.
Was he a starter? When did Tony Parker start on the All-Star team?
I'm gonna look this up right now.
When did he start? That's the thing. The Spurs didn't have starters on the All-Star team. They had phenomenal, well-developed team basketball. Magic Johnson. And go watch that video. You young kids watching this, go watch that video. It's Magic Johnson.
Tony Parker was an All-Star between 2012 and 2014.
He was what?
Tony Parker is a 6-time NBA All-Star.
Starter?
Every year between 2012 and 2014.
No, starter. I'm talking about, when I say all-star, I mean superstar. I think the NBA is obsessed with superstars, not like D-Lo. The NBA is not obsessed with D-Lo, right? The NBA is not obsessed with.
Now you're underrating everyone on the Spurs again, just like how you said that was happening earlier. You said Tim Duncan was on. You roped Tim Duncan into this wild Steph Curry take, to keep me hostage, and you told me he's underrated. Now you're underrating him.
No. He's not. Like, I'm talking about his like playing on the court. Playing on the court, Tim Duncan in 2014 was not the most important player. Kawhi Leonard was the only superstar on that team. He was the only superstar on that team. Tim Duncan was not a superstar on that team when they won in 2014. That's not the point, though. It doesn't matter if he was a superstar. The point is, together, they were a super team. That's the point. It's that people are forgetting that you can win championships and be a super team without superstars. Super teams without superstars. You don't need superstars to have a super team. That's why the Warriors were great. They had great players who became superstars. They one-upped the Spurs. The Warriors are Spurs 2014 with more superstars.
The only team I can think of that fits your team building model that's ever won a championship in my lifetime are the Detroit Pistons. And that was after the Lakers, who had the exact problems that you're complaining about right now, won like 3 straight championships.
No, hear me. It's not like you don't need superstars to win championships. Like the Nets are not going to win a championship. The Nets are not going to win a championship. Okay.
So what is your team building solution to this dilemma?
Team development with just getting superstars who you think are superstars who are just going to merge together, mix, and play great basketball. You need players who understand their roles. You need leadership. You need great management. You need all those pieces you need. You need team chemistry. Like the Lakers failed. This is the problem, is that they put their team on the streets to get a player who they didn't succeed in getting because he was a superstar, but at the cost of the team, right? Same thing with Kyrie Irving. You get a superstar and you try to keep that superstar at the cost of a team that played well together, who knew their roles, who were a super team together, who made it to the Eastern Conference Finals and only lost the greatest player of all time, LeBron James, arguably, right? Whatever. Like, that's the problem, is that like it's not that you don't need a superstar to win. The Nets need a superstar to win, but you can't substitute that part of the process.
Okay.
That part of the process. That's what the Spurs did. That was great. That's what the Warriors did. That's what the Nets are doing that are great. That's what the Lakers and Celtics need to learn from, is what I'm saying.
I think the Celtics did everything right and just ended up getting very unlucky.
I think the Celtics did nothing right, and they got exactly what they deserved.
They did exactly what you said they should do. They drafted young guys. They developed them. They got their star, who didn't technically have to be their leader, but decided he was going to be their leader anyway. He did a terrible job of it. Just like, what if Kevin Durant had gone to the Warriors and decided that Kevin Durant wanted to be the leader because he had gotten to he'd been in the league. He had probably had the most playoff experience of anyone. He probably played the most playoff games. So what if Kevin Durant said, "I'm the only one who knows what it takes. I'm Kevin Durant." Don't you think?
Yeah, you're right.
Just bad luck.
No. But the Celtics made no mistakes when they brought the team together, but they made mistakes this year when they thought they just kept cramming the solution as Kyrie Irving as the solution. Kyrie, trade that guy. Get a better leader. Get more role players who fit in that team chemistry that you can develop to be even better players, right?
I don't know.
I think that you're right that they followed the mold correctly. Well-developed role players, bring in a star. It should work. It didn't work. So don't keep making it work. Leverage what you have. Get more. Anthony Davis also not a leader. You should, just putting Anthony Davis on the team is not what's going to make it happen, right? Like Sam, who do you want? What do you want the Celtics to look like next year?
Oh God.
What is the problem to you then?
What is the problem? I don't know how to fix this team. I would not be sad if Kyrie Irving left. I would not be sad.
Yeah, me neither.
I would be more sad if he signed one of those stupid 1+1 deals and held the team hostage for another year.
Yep.
I'd be very sad about that.
Yep.
I would also not be sad if he's like, you know what, like the Knicks are a disaster. Like the Clippers are the Clippers. I'm gonna stay here. I'm gonna sign a 5-year deal. I would not be sad.
Yeah.
But then I would be sad. I would be very sad if